the power of the magician's gaze in Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa, and the importance of faith. And we're going to get into a lot of things. Today is going to be an excellent day for these videos because we're going to be looking at about 3 or 4 different chapters in Agrippa. 3 or 4 chapters. In particular, chapter 50, 65, 66. I have it written down. Let's see. Yeah, yep. We're going to be looking at this. And thank you, everyone, for watching my videos. I just want to say that I really appreciate everyone. And people have been really supportive on my channel. So thank you very much. And also, I wanted to announce that yesterday I made a video on Patreon. All of my Patreon videos will be released after a year. But I made a video for Patreon on an Apple love spell that I try not to put my beliefs, I try not to put my beliefs out there. People can come up with their own conclusion. But in my personal opinion, it is an extremely effective spell. It's the Apple spell. And of course, there's more to it than that. But that's on my Patreon. So every other video is going to be on Patreon. By the way, I wanted to say that I really do appreciate my Patreon subscribers. By supporting my videos, it helps me to really put my focus on providing this content and really coming up full steam and making these videos for y'all. So thank you, everyone, all of you that support my Patreon. If you would like to support my work, then there's going to be a link pinned to the top if you would like to check out my Patreon page. So I really appreciate everyone that supports my work because it does take a lot of time and effort to make these videos, and a lot of study, and there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, that goes into these videos. But today we're getting into a very interesting topic, and for one thing, we're going to talk about the gaze in magic, and it's found in Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa. In particular, it's chapter 50, where it talks about the art of fascination, the importance of the gaze. One of the most prevalent beliefs, ubiquitous beliefs across all cultures, all around the world, and magical beliefs, you can go pretty much anywhere in the world, there will be an idea of, people are familiar with the evil eye, right? The evil eye. That a look of envy can, produce a negative effect. The evil eye. You found it in all these cultures around the world, this idea of the evil eye. But today what I'm going to talk about, amongst several other things in this video, is that the gaze could be used for other things. The gaze could be used for positive things as well. Okay, so people tend to think of the negativity of the gaze, or the evil eye, of the glance, but also it can be used for positive and constructive purposes, as we'll be talking about today. So, we have a lot of ground to cover today. First of all, I would like to take a look in the 3 books of occult philosophy. We're here in this video. First of all, let's take a look at book 1. By the way, I'm going to put up a commissioned Amazon link for those that would like to support my channel and purchase a copy. The version that I use is the James Freak because it's in the public domain, and I don't want to infringe upon anyone on their work. So I use the public domain James Freak translation. But today first of all, we're going to look at Book 1, Chapter 66 of Agrippa, that the passions of the mind are helped by a celestial season, and how necessary the constancy of the mind is in every work. This is something that you see in Agrippa's writings, and you also see it in texts like the Picatrix. The importance of believing in your magic, of faith, is very important. So let's take a look at this, and we're going to really delve into this. And it's important to understand that magic is all encompassing. Okay? In ancient times, there was not this rigid division between the material life and the spiritual life. At the further back you go, you see this more and more. You know, in ancient polytheistic cultures, often if someone is a craftsman, or if someone works in a certain trade, they will call upon the divinity, or in Christian times, or in Christian societies, call upon the patron saint of the profession, or even the angel of the profession, or the god or goddess of the profession when going to work. So magic, what are you using it for? You want a safe journey. Well, you're bringing magic into your everyday mundane life. Even the 3 books of occult philosophy, I would argue, it's implicit that all these things go together, right? The 3 realms, we have physic, okay, which for Agrippa was like a natural science, the material world that we live in, right? Like optics and all kinds of things like that, right? So we have the world of physic, the mathematical realm, or the celestial realm, and the realm of religion. So all of these things tied together. And the further back you go, in many ancient cultures, not just in the Renaissance, but in many different cultures and time periods, the further back in time you go, the more you see how there is not this rigid division. Someone may be a doctor and soothsaying, you know, doing divination. Someone may be an advisor, okay, at a royal court and looking at, you know, omens and things like that. All of these things kind of tied together, right? Even in nature, you go back to ancient Greece, the nymphs were in the countryside, right? If you want safe passage, or you drink from a stream, or maybe you're looking for the healing properties of healing wells, you may call on the powers of the natural place. And by the way, I made another video on the different properties of the elements. And, you know, you have healing waters. And this is found in polytheistic pagan cultures. And then even if you look at the Judeo-Christian side of things, you know, there's like passages, like the angel that would trouble the waters. And when that would happen, people would go into the waters and be healed. Okay? There's a lot of sacred wells, things like that. And if you look at, let's take a look at polytheistic cultures. It can be Ireland, it could be Greece, it could be anywhere, right? The natural landscape is implicit in the mythology. That mountain is sacred. This particular river, there are myths associated with that river in the mythology. So, for example, in Greece, you know, we tend, if we don't live in Greece or haven't been to Greece, we tend to think of these things detached from the countryside. But it's important to understand, for example, if you're looking at Greek mythology, that there may be a myth of a certain river Well, you can go travel to that river, right? And of course, that's a great opportunity for magic. You could say, what does this have to do with Agrippa? Well, for one thing, Agrippa was always looking back at the ancient sources. The word Renaissance means renaissance, the rebirth, right? It's a rebirth of classical learning and classical knowledge. And Agrippa is often quoting people like Pliny the Elder or Ovid or Tacitus or different people, Cicero. So this is something that you find throughout Agrippa, the writings of Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa. So today we are reading from, and I'll be talking about what is the magic teaching here, from the 3 books of occult philosophy, which was written around 1509, 1510, passed around in manuscript form until book 1 being printed in 1531 and all 3 books in 1533. So this is from the 16th century. And while we don't want to be limited in our understanding of magic by these old writings, no, we don't want to be limited. We want to be expanded, right? But part of that expansion is understanding that we are links within a chain, that there is much ancient knowledge that we can derive. We don't need to burn or get rid of our ancient books of magic. There's a lot of wisdom there, okay? So just like you learned from anyone else, today we're going to be sitting at the feet of the 16th century sage and taking a look at what he has to say. So we're reading from the 16th century text, the 3 books of occult philosophy, book 1, chapter 66, that the passions of the mind are helped by a celestial season, and how necessary the constancy of the mind is in every work. So, I'm going to read here, and then we're going to talk about it and break it down. Again, this is the 3 books of occult philosophy, book 1, chapter 66. The passions of the mind are much helped and are helpful, and become most powerful by virtue of the heaven, as they agree with the heaven. And you see this in Picatrix as well, that if you're going to invoke a solar influence, it's good to get into a type of solar or jovial or Venusian type of mindset, even down to dress. You know, magic is not just external actions. It's also an internal thing. And I'll say that again, okay? Magic is not just external actions on the outside. It's not just something, otherwise it would just be empty ritual. Magic is something that is external and within. As within, so without. As above, so below. Right? It is a reflection also of an internal reality. And of course, we can go back to, talking about, for example, the Pharisees. You know, you're so worried about the outside of the cup, cleaning the outside of the cup, but the inside of the cup is left unclean. We can get so focused on the external aspects of magic that we forget the internal. So it's both, right? It should reflect in both sides. So the passions of the mind are much helped and are helpful, and become most powerful by virtue of the heaven, as they agree with the heaven. So if you're trying to invoke Mars, you might want to be in a martial attitude, or Venus, a Venusian type of mindset, to help foster that invocation and to properly channel and bring down these forces from above. For as saith, and agree with the heaven, either by natural agreement or voluntary election. For as saith Ptolemaeus, he which chooseth that which is the better seems to differ nothing from him which hath this of nature. It conduceth therefore very much for the receiving the benefit of the heavens, like making a talisman or spirit evocation, or both. It conduceth therefore very much for the receiving the benefit of the heavens in any work, if we shall by the heaven make ourselves suitable to it in our thoughts, affections, which are emotions, our thoughts, emotions, imaginations, elections, deliberations, contemplations, and the like. For such like passions do vehemently stir up our spirit to their likeness, and suddenly expose us and ours to the superior significators of such like passions, and also by reason of their dignity and nearness to the superiors, do much more partake of the celestials than any material things. And if you think of, for Agrippa and for someone like Plato, when you talk about the mind, you're talking about really the soul, right? The soul. For our mind can, through imaginations or reason, by a kind of imitation, be so conformed to any star or planet. So our mind, our imagination, our feelings, our thoughts are conformed to Venus to channel Venus or bring down Venus. Or we have Jupiterian emotions and thoughts and contemplations or dress or whatever to bring down the powers of Jupiter. So, for such like passions do vehemently stir up our spirit to their likeness, and suddenly expose us and ours to the superior significators of such like passions, and also by reason of their dignity and nearness to the superiors, do much more partake of the celestials than any material things. For our mind, this is Agrippa, our mind can, through imaginations or reason, by a kind of imitation, be so conformed to any star or planet, as suddenly to be filled with the virtues of that star or planet, as if it were a proper receptacle of the influence thereof. You don't go trying to invoke Venus in an angry attitude, or invoke Mercury in a sad type of attitude, or whatever you're trying to do. Now, the contemplating mind, as it withdraws itself from all sense, imagination, nature, and deliberation, and calls itself back to things separated, unless it exposeth itself to Saturn, is not of present consideration of inquiry. What he's saying here is he's not talking about just withdrawing from senses and emotions and all that, like within ourselves, right? Unless we're, working with Saturn in the sense of the planet of isolation and philosophy. For our mind doth affect diverse things by faith. By faith. Very important. For our mind doth affect diverse things by faith, which is a firm adhesion, a fixed intention, and vehement application of the worker or receiver to him that cooperates in anything and gives power to the work which we intend to do. So faith and our mental attitudes and our emotions conform to the work, right? And our faith. To him that cooperates in anything gives power to the work which we intend to do, so that there is made, as it were, in us the image of the virtues to be received, and the thing to be done in us or by us. I'm almost done here. I know for some people Agrippa can get kind of dry, but almost done here. We must therefore in every work and application of things affect with an A, it's talking about emotions or feeling. Affect vehemently, imagine, hope, and believe strongly, for that will be a great help. And it is verified amongst physicians that a strong belief and an undoubted hope and love towards the physician and medicine conduceth much to help. So right there, he's talking about I mean, it sounds silly, or some people say that sounds new agey. Well, he's talking about how belief in a medicine can affect a change. For the same, back then it would be considered magic. And is it not still? Something to think about. We can relabel something. For the same that the efficacy and virtue of the medicine works, the same doth the strong imagination of the physician work, being able to change the qualities in the body of the sick, especially when the patient placeth much confidence in the physician. This is Cornelius Agrippa in the 16th century here. What he's telling us. If you believe in the medicine, it could work. Especially when the patient placeth much confidence in the physician, by that means disposing himself for the receiving the virtue of the physician and physic. Last paragraph here. Therefore, he that works in magic must be of a constant belief. Be credulous that's just another word like believing. And not at all doubt of the obtaining the effect. I'm going to read that again. This is Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy, written in the 16th century, book 1, chapter 66, final paragraph. Therefore, he that works in magic, and it could be he or she, of course, must be of a constant belief, be credulous, and not at all doubt of the obtaining the effect. For as a firm and strong belief doth work wonderful things, although it be in false works, so distrust and doubting doth dissipate and break the virtue of the mind of the worker. So doubting breaks the mind of the worker, which is the medium betwixt both extremes. Both extremes meaning wetting a star to herbs burning, or a talisman, or a poppet, or whatever your wax figures, whatever you're working. Okay, that belief, you're like the, magician card, you're pulling up from above and pushing that below. It's an ancient, old teaching of as above, so below, which is the basis of what modern magic would be. So, of course, you're going to see these teachings reflected in things like tarot and things like that. The purpose of the magician, in order to be a fit receptacle, if you don't believe in your working, it's like a wire. You're pulling from above the planet and pushing below into the talisman or whatever. A lack of belief, it's like a wire with a short in it, right? There's no, it doesn't connect. Therefore, he or she that works in magic must be of a constant belief, be credulous, and not at all doubt of the obtaining the effect. For as a firm and strong belief doth work wonderful things, although it be in false work. Like you can be doing BS and believe in it, right? So distrust and doubting doth dissipate and break the virtue of the mind of the worker, which is the medium betwixt both extremes, meaning the planet and the talisman. Whence it happens that he is frustrated of the desired influence of the superiors, which could not be joined and united to our labors without a firm and solid virtue of our mind. So Agrippa is not saying that externals don't matter. Clearly, the whole 3 books of occult philosophy is using ingredients and looking at timing, and all of that is, the whole text, But he's saying that's important too. It includes all of it. So magic for Agrippa, yes, it includes oils and plants and stones and a knowledge of the heavens and the names and sigils of spirits. It does include these things. That's what the book pretty much is. But he's saying that it's both, right? In addition to that, you need belief. And he even says here that even if it's a false magic or something that's not based on science in this sense, what he considers like occult science, even if it's like just something made up. The belief can overcome that and still make it effective. But whatever ceremony, you can do the most elaborate ceremony, and if you don't believe in your working, that's going to affect the results. Very important to believe in your magic. This is, it's right there in the 3 books of occult philosophy from the 16th century. If you go do a spell or a magic thing, and then after you do the spell, you let your mind worry, did it work? I wonder if it's going to work. Maybe it didn't work. I hope it works, right? You're already undoing what you did. Why even do the spell to start with? You have to enter into the spell with the firm conviction that it will be achieved once you do the spell. It is done, and you're just waiting because you know it's going to come out, and you're just waiting for it to happen. Either keep your mind off of it or focus. And another thing is the importance, in a lot of traditional occult lore, people have many different opinions, and that's fine. I tend to agree with the traditional occult lore of the importance of secrecy. You don't need to go tell people, especially doubters, what you're doing, okay? A skeptical eye could potentially affect a result. It's better to work in secret. The word occult means hidden, okay? So that is, so what do we gather from that text? 2 important things here. First of all, the importance of belief and not doubting. You don't want, the last thing you want to do is do a spell or a working. You do it and then wonder, did it work? I wonder if it worked. I don't know. Oh, I hope it does. What if it didn't work? Don't do that. You're already undoing your work by doing that. Do the spell with the conviction that it is so. Do your magic. Believe. And when the spell is done, know that it is done. Okay? You could bring in a skeptical eye later. Okay, after it should have materialized. If you don't get anything, then you can go back and start doubt or whatever, right? But, yeah. The second thing we get from this is that the mind needs to be in accord with what you're trying to draw in. If you're trying to do a martial working for protection, for whatever you're trying to do, you need to enter in like a warrior, right? Okay, if you're trying to do a love working to draw love to you, you need to do so with the knowledge that, yeah, I look pretty good, Yeah, I'm going to get me some love, You need to enter it like that. Have a Venusian attitude, kind of like the goddess of love, Like Venus, okay? Enter in knowing that you are Eros, okay? And do the working. Know that you are seductive. You are drawing. Or if you're doing a working for Jupiter, what is Jupiter? What is a Jupiterian mindset? Ambition, power, exaltation, expansion, rising up. These are qualities of Jupiter, and that's how you need to enter into your Jupiter working. With this mindset. With this similarity, you could say like similitude or like plucking a string, right? You resonate at that, like plucking the strings of a lyre. By entering in with that attitude of Jupiter to do the Jupiter working, you're more able to call down. You're more in resonance with the powers being invoked. And so that's an interesting thought. What Agrippa is saying here is the importance of belief, and when you're calling a certain force to get your mind and emotions and attitudes and imagination all in sympathy with the force you're invoking. okay? You want to be in a good mood when you do the spell. If you're trying to bring in love or abundance or good luck, you want to be in a good mood. You don't want to be sad and moping or angry when you're trying to bring in blessings, right? Now, that's all fine and dandy for works upon yourself, but if you go back a chapter to the 3 books of occult philosophy, book 1, chapter 65, we're going to the previous chapter now, we see that it affects others, how the passions of the mind can work out of themselves upon another's body. So Agrippa is saying that your passions don't only affect yourself, they could affect others. That's what Agrippa is saying in this chapter 65. I'm not sure if I'll read it here. I guess we'll just a little bit of it, right? Agrippa says in chapter 65, the passions of the soul, which follow the fantasy when they are most vehement or strong, the passions in the imagination, can not only change their own body, but also can transcend so as to work upon another body, so that some wonderful impressions are thence produced in elements and extrinsical things, outside things, and can also so take away or bring some diseases of the mind or body. And then later on, he goes on to how mind, or the inner world, the soul, can affect another soul or consciousness in the same way that a body affects another body. You can go up and touch someone physically. In the same way, he's saying that there's a power in the mind or the soul or whatever, right? Consciousness that could also affect another consciousness. So I'm not going to read that whole thing, but yeah, you get the idea. So let's take a look at chapter 50 on the gaze, because that's kind of what I wanted to go into as well, the gaze. You know, people often think of, oh, the evil eye, and it's found in every culture. But the gaze can be used for positive things, to bless, to heal, to bring abundance, or to influence. If, you know, I try not to moralize in my videos. I think it's better to go around spreading goodness and to just get rid of the bad. Right? That's my attitude. It's better to just focus on goodness and bringing people up and bringing yourself up. Right? By the way, that reminds me, I'm thinking about going back with the Shem Angels, doing more work with them again, cycling through. The Shem Angels really helped me a lot in my life, and they've helped a lot of people. A lot of people. I've never put my Shem Angel videos on Patreon out there. I think I did like a couple on there, but for the most part, my Shem Angel videos always been public, you know, and they've helped a lot of goodness for goodness' sake. But I just want to throw this in here. Someone asked me a question the other day, and I've actually gotten this question a lot. Do I need to wait for the spring equinox to start with Shem Angel 1? If you don't have to follow any astrological considerations. Why? Well, if we're looking at Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy, we have this 3-world model, the elementary, celestial, and super celestial, or divine. The super celestial realm is beyond the astrological realm. Although the astrological realm is a reflection downward. You could say they govern the 72 quinaries of the zodiac. Angel magic goes beyond the astrological realm. Yeah, you don't have to use any kind of special timing for Shem Angels. You don't have to. But many people, myself included, that plan to cycle through all 72 Shem Angels in a year, which is what I like to do, you know, and it's an operation every 5 days, it's just enough, that 5-day gap between invocations is just enough to where you're not doing invocations every single day. You can go crazy, right? It's not because the angels are trying to hurt you or anything, no. But some people can go a little off the deep end if you're doing this stuff just daily, daily, daily. Some people, they end up fine, whatever. I look at it like this. It's like radiation. Think of all the radiation coming off of something that puts off a lot of energy, right? You could get harmed from too much radiation, even though it's not intended. Okay, the mind can only handle so much. But every 5 days of working is still pretty close together, so it's just enough to keep you constantly in this high momentum. So anyways, the question is, if you do decide to cycle through all 72 in a year by following the sun through the zodiac, if you do decide to do that, which again is not required, you don't need special timing for Shem Angels, but many people find it useful. Do you need to start at Shem Angel 1? No. When I started my working, and I did a year and a half actually. I started in September with the Shem Angels, okay, in Libra. And I started at like 68 or 67, 65. No, it was like 60, I don't remember. But it was in the 60s, right? I started with the Shem Angels, I forgot the number, but I started in September. And I worked through, hit the spring equinox, and continued to work through, and it was phenomenal. It's better to start with the Shem Angels now, or whenever you feel the desire, than to put it off until spring, and by then you might be focused on other things. It's better to start now if you're going to work with the Shem Angels. So nothing to do with today's video, but now that I thought of that question that I received, I wanted to address that. Now, to the gaze, right? Agrippa established the powers of the mind upon ourselves and in our workings, how the mind could help or hinder a working, and the importance of belief and faith and not doubting, and putting the mind in sympathy with the force that you're invoking. Okay, sympathy, right? And then also, chapter 65 talked about how you could affect others too, not just yourself. So now we're going to go to chapter 50 and briefly look at this. We're looking at the 3 books of occult philosophy, book 1, chapter 50. Oh, this is cool. I forgot. Also chapter 54, if you want to get into, auguries or the symbolism of animals, you find that in chapter 64, 65, 54, which is a language of its own. Many people will say that if you're looking at omens or animals, that you're just finding patterns. Well, yeah, that's fine. But that doesn't, I do tend to believe, again, I don't want to put any beliefs out there for anyone else. In my opinion, dang it, I just got a message and it distracted me a second. What was I going to say? Dang it, it was important. I hate when I do that. Oh, yeah, you're developing a language to communicate with the world soul, or the cosmos, the anima mundi, whatever you want to say, so the universe can begin speaking to you in a series of puns. Okay? But that's not for today's topic. We're going to look at chapter 50 of the 3 books of occult philosophy. People talk about Agrippa, but it's good to actually read Agrippa, right? So we're going to the 3 books of occult philosophy now, book 1, chapter 50. of fascination and the art thereof. So this is about the power of the gaze, which is not just bad. The gaze could be used to manipulate others, true, but the gaze could be used to bless, to bring blessings. The gaze could be a positive thing, right? My symbol that I've used since I was a teenager has always been the all-seeing eye. It's nothing to do with the Illuminati or anything, you know. I do kind of like, you know, shocking people and stuff, but I've got to be mature, you know, get past all that. But by the way, their symbol was the Owl of Minerva, anyways. To me, I have my own meaning of that symbol, but the eye is important. Anyways, of fascination and the art thereof. Fascination, I'm reading Agrippa, 3 books of occult philosophy, book 1, chapter 50. So we're switching through these chapters here. Fascination is a binding, which comes from the spirit of the witch, through the eyes of him that is bewitched, entering into his heart. Now the instrument of fascination is the spirit, that is a certain pure, lucid, subtle vapor, generated of the pure blood by the heat of the heart. It doth always send forth through the eyes, rays like to itself. Those rays being sent forth do carry with them a spiritual vapor, and that vapor a blood as it were, and blear and red eyes, whose rays being sent forth to the eyes of him that is opposite, and looks upon them, carries the vapor of the corrupt blood together by itself, by the contagion of which it doth infect the eyes of the beholder with the like disease. So the eye being opened, symbol of awakening. Anyways, no. Back to Agrippa. That's not what he's talking about, but anyways. So the eye being opened and intent upon anyone with a strong so this is important. We're reading 3 books of occult philosophy, book 1, chapter 50. We're breaking it down, y'all. So the eye being opened and intent upon anyone with a strong imagination, doth dart its beams, which are the vehicle of the spirit, into the eyes of him that is opposite to him or her, which tender spirit strikes the eyes of him that is bewitched, being stirred up from the heart of him that strikes, and possesseth the breast of him that is stricken, wounds his heart, and infects his spirit. Whence Apuleius, the golden ass. Let's read this quote from Apuleius. This is from the Golden Ass or Metamorphosis of Apuleius. This is from ancient Rome, so it's an ancient Roman text. I am so stricken and subdued with thy shining eyes, ruddy cheeks. This woman is seducing him here, right? He's getting seduced with the gaze. I am so stricken and subdued with thy shining eyes, ruddy cheeks, glittering hair, sweet causes and lily-white paps, that I neither have mind to go home nor to depart hence, but esteem the pleasure which I shall have with thee this night, above all the joys of the world. All right. Whence Apuleius saith, thy eyes sliding down through my eyes into mine inward breast stirs up a most vehement burning in my marrow. The passions are stirred with the gaze. You ever have, some people do that. It's kind of a natural thing. Some people, when they're attracted to you, they'll kind of like look, kind of make eye contact and look away. Yeah, I think that's a natural thing. People do magic all the time. They just don't know it's magic. You ever have somebody, looking at, and then you look and they look, you know what's going on. You know? It's, Anyways, know therefore that men are then most bewitched, when with often beholding they direct the edge of their sight, so the corner of the eye, to the edge of their sight that bewitched them. And when their eyes are reciprocally intent one upon the other, and when rays are joined to rays, again, this idea of rays of power coming from the eyes. You ever seen somebody with like a shining vision? And the lights delights, for then the spirit of the one is joined to the spirit of the other. When you make eye contact, there's a joining of spirits. And fixeth its sparks, so are strong ligations made, and so most vehement loves, and strong loves are inflamed with only the rays of the eyes. Seduction, y'all. Even with a certain sudden looking on, as if it were with a dart or stroke penetrating the whole body. Whence then the spirit and amorous blood, being thus wounded, are carried forth upon the lover and enchanter, no otherwise than the blood and spirit of vengeance of him that is slain, are upon him that slays him. Whence Lucretius sang concerning those amorous bewitchings. The body smitten is, but yet the mind is wounded with the darts of Cupid, blind. All parts do sympathize in the wound, but no, the blood appears in that which had the blow. So great is the power of fascination, as the magical gaze. So great is the power of fascination, especially when the vapors of the eyes are subservient to the affection. The vapors of the eye, affection means emotions, feelings. So great is the power of fascination, especially when the vapors of the eyes are subservient to the emotions. You're channeling emotions through the gaze. And it's best to do in person, This is something that the other person needs to see you back, really, for best results. Therefore, witches use cauleries. Cauleries means eye drops. Yeah, I wouldn't put, rose water in the eyes, but whatever, I'd be a little careful, but that's what he's talking about, cauleries, or eye drops. Therefore witches use cauleries, ointments, allegations, and such like to affect and corroborate the spirit of this or that manner. So I would be careful what you put in your eyes, right? But some people that want to increase the ability, let's say they want to raise from their boss through the gaze, they can use like a Jupiterian eye wash, right? To help empower the power of the gaze through eye drops, basically. Therefore witches use cauleries, ointments, allegations, and such like to affect and corroborate the spirit this or that manner. So to affect the gaze, you need strong emotion, and you could even use some special magic eye drops, and ideally get the other person to see you back. To procure love, again, it's not just evil eye. It could be used for love or abundance or prosperity, to influence someone, or to help somebody. The gaze, they don't need to know what you're doing. There's this whole thing with ethics is a very complicated issue, but a lot of the really strong opinions in the occult community just weren't there in the 16th century. A lot of it comes from a misunderstanding of certain neo-pagan teachings that aren't even what was originally intended, that somehow took a life of its own. But anyways, people do what they feel. I'm not here to tell people how to do their magic. That's for you or people as adults to make their decisions. But anyways, to procure love, they use venereal cauleries or eye drops. As hippomenes, the blood of doves or sparrows and such like, to induce fear, they use martial eye drops, as of the eyes of wolves, the hyena, and the like. To procure misery and sickness, they use saturnine, and so of the rest. So, And again, I'm not encouraging people to do anything like, that's probably not the best way, but so what do we gather from this? We did a lot of reading here. We read like 3 or 4 chapters of Agrippa. What do we gather from these teachings? You know, you can do a Lectio Divina with Agrippa. A chapter is usually just a page in Agrippa. It's good to read a chapter a day. Doesn't have to be in or anywhere. Read it, contemplate what you read. So we read the text. You don't just read Agrippa and set the book down and forget it. You set the book down, and without looking at the book, try to remember what you read. What is the teaching? What is the essence? What do we distill from Agrippa's teaching? First of all, the importance of faith in magic, not doubting. You go in with the conviction that it is so, and it is done. You don't doubt your practice after. You're dissipating the spell. So of course it's not going to work. Second of all, being in resonance with whatever you're invoking. Have a martial attitude to do a Mars working. Have an ambitious attitude to work with Jupiter. Have a Venusian attitude to work with Venus. Right? Make yourself in tune with what you're calling. And, like I said, magic, with the secular and spiritual, there wasn't these strict divisions. All things were one. Magic is something that is imbued in all aspects of life. So, if you're going around focusing on Mars type energy, you're going to find yourself in conflicts. If you're isolated and depressed, very Saturnine, you're going to find more sadness. If you're focused on Jupiterian things and projects and building and expanding, your life will become more expanded. Also, there's excesses of every planet. Someone that's overly venereal can have an excess of pleasure in things that can cause problems. Or drunkenness, or whatever it may be. Someone that's too overworked and ambitious to where like their job just consumes them. They have too much Jupiter. So, I don't think I read it here. It's in one of the chapters, and I didn't really read the part, but I was reading it just earlier when the idea hit me for this video. Agrippa talks about, you have sympathy and antipathy. Sympathies is to make oneself like what you invoke, or sympathy, or what you do to an object that is similar in effects. Antipathies, which you hear less about in the magic community, is not about drawing in what you're resonating with. It's bringing in an opposing force, right? If you're overly kind, and I don't think you can be too kind, but sometimes you can be too kind with certain people. Bring in a little Mars or Saturn, have a little bit of a restriction. If you're out partying all the time and it's messing up your life, okay, bring in that Saturn restriction. Think of the rings of Saturn, a boundary. Draw inward. If you have too much Saturn and withdrawal and sadness and all this, and you need to get out there what Marsilio Ficino mentions in his De Vita Coelitus Comparanda. Okay, that go out in green fields and pluck roses of Venus, or have gold around you of the sun, or surround yourself with a royal blue of Jupiter, to bring in these jovial and Venusian things to help counteract too much Saturn. So you can use not only sympathies, this is important, you could also use antipathies. Okay, but ultimately, classical ceremonial magic is not opposed to the mental aspect of things, it incorporates it as part of it, as part of a whole. The 3 books of occult philosophy govern the elementary, celestial, supercelestial, the physic, mathematics, and theology. All of it makes a whole. Just like we aren't cut off from our arms or cut off from our feet, we're not cut off from any emotion. We're not cut off from anything. Our souls are not cut off from our bodies. Our minds are not cut off from our souls. All of it is a unity. Okay? So everything from what you wear, what you surround yourself with, what you focus on, it all affects your magic. But I think that 3 very important points that we can get from what we just read in Agrippa. Again, we're not just reading Agrippa and setting it down. We're thinking, what did I learn? Close the book, set it aside, and from memory, what did I learn? What is the essence of the teaching from what I just read? Or what you just read? Or whoever. What I gather from this, the gaze is a powerful thing. And the importance of belief in your magic, doubting can dissipate. Why go through all the rigmarole of doing a magical work, operation, or spell if you're going to doubt that it worked after and mess up your own results? And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Faith. If you're going to, second of the 3 things, main things I get from this, second, is putting yourself in sympathy with the force you're invoking. Have an ambitious, I can do, expanded attitude when you go to invoke Jupiter or make a Jupiter talisman. Have a whatever, Venusian. I don't like the word venereal for some. Venusian, right? Venus attitude when you go to invoke Venus. Do so knowing that it is done, knowing that you're attracting your partner, right? Whatever you're working on, you need to, with your feelings, imagination, thoughts, also in conjunction with the external things. Again, magic is not just empty ceremonialism. It's also inward. It's both. It incorporates both. Don't be like the Pharisee, to use the gospel example, of focusing on the outside of the cup while the inside is dirty. But you're cleansing the outside of the cup. And the power of, and the third thing I get from this is important, is the power of looking of the gaze to affect magic. It's not just evil eye. The same power could also heal or bring benefit to others. And the 4th thing, I'll add a 4th thing, is it's not just sympathies, it's antipathies. Just like you can use the power of sympathies to make connections and draw down forces for magic, you could also use antipathies to bring down the opposite. So, a little bit of Magic 101 with Cornelius Agrippa. Thank you everyone so much for watching my video. And I really appreciate all of you. So I hope that y'all are reading the text, and it's an excellent work. I love the 3 books of occult philosophy. It's hands down my favorite magic book, and it's my go-to. And anyways, thank you so much for watching my video. I really appreciate all of you, and I will see y'all in the next video. All right, have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much.